First of all, just to introduce myself, my name is Simon Hannigan. I'm one of the diversity partners here in Arthur Cox. I'd first like to say thank you very much to Breda for organising this event, and to welcome all of you to Arthur Cox and our fancy new offices that we're very proud of. And I did mention earlier that if anyone wants to get a tour, do get in touch with myself or any of the Arthur Cox team to get a tour of the building after this evening. But just briefly to mention, Breda came in and spoke to us about a month ago, and collectively we were extremely impressed by Breda herself, but also by the message that she gave us. We are starting our own Lean In Circle within Arthur Cox, which is part of our broader diversity programme, which has enormous support throughout the firm. One of the biggest challenges for law firms is to make sure that real change is happening, not just at junior levels, but particularly at senior levels in organisations. We currently have 30% of our partnership comprises female partners, but from our perspective, while that is comparatively strong compared to our competitors, we certainly don't think it's anywhere near where it should be, particularly when you consider that the graduates coming into Arthur Cox comprise 64% female coming through from college. So certainly we're missing something along the way. We are working very hard to identify what that is and why that is happening. As a male partner, but who also has a wife who's a partner in another law firm, who'll remain nameless, competitor, but who perhaps sees the challenges that are shared and are not weighted in anyone's favour on a daily basis. But also having worked closely with my female colleagues, my male colleagues, I know intuitively that this is something that is on the agenda at all levels of Arthur Cox. All of the partners recently attended a MARC training, which is a Men Advocating Real Change, which whoever do get an opportunity is a really sort of humbling experience, as I was saying to some of you earlier. And it's comprised of a 2-day training course where all of the partners attended on a Friday and Saturday, and really is about unconscious bias. And irrespective of how consciously unconscious you may think you're not biased, you discover that we all have unconscious bias. And I think drawing a line under that and accepting that as a starter is a long journey for some people, but certainly that training was hugely positive from our perspective, and really changing the culture in a positive way. But that's just a little bit of probably to tell you what we're doing. But I'd also like to just obviously pass to Breda to thank her for her recent talk again, which again has prompted a Lean In Circle within Arthur Cox, but also to welcome you all again and to wish you a very nice evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. I want to just say a quick hello. I'm not started yet in my speeches or anything because we're going to watch a video, but I just want to say hi, I'm Breda McCaig. You're all very, very welcome this evening. I'm delighted to see such a full room. Delighted you all got seats. As you probably know, there was crack over trying to get that waiting list down on LinkedIn. So delighted you're all here. We're going to do a video now. We asked the Lean In organisation in the UK and the US to send us over a video to share with Lean In Ireland tonight. And we're going to just play that now.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Sandberg, and I'm excited to invite you to join a Lean In Circle. Lean In Circles are small peer groups that allow you to learn and share in an atmosphere of confidentiality and trust. There's lots of evidence, from book clubs to weight loss groups to team projects, that we all achieve more in groups than we do as individuals. That's why we're forming Lean In Circles, and we invite you to form one or join one. They're groups of 8 to 12 peers that agree to meet together once a month, both to focus on sharing and focus on education. Working with experts from around the world, including the Clayman Institute on Gender Research at Stanford, will give you education modules. You can learn how to negotiate, how to communicate, how to navigate your career. And we'll also support you as you share experiences with each other, supporting each other as a group you lean in. I'm excited to have you join a Lean In Circle as we all lean in together.
So I just thought thought we'd open with that because nobody explains lean-in circles better than Cheryl Sandberg. And I think, everybody's wondering what lean-in circles are, how they work and how they set up. And I thought that was a good way of sort of opening for you tonight. So as I said, I'm Breda McKeag and I'm with Lean in Ireland. I'm also in Bank of Ireland, a lot of Ireland's in there. And I'm going to go through the agenda that we're going to follow today, and then I'm going to be introducing you to the panel. Before I do all that, I want to say a few thank yous. And the first one goes to Arthur Cox, because I'm delighted that we brought our sort of first event of 2018 to Arthur Cox. I think their building is fabulous, and so is their welcome. And they've been very good to me and very supportive and so good to work with. And I'd like to thank Simon that you've met earlier, the Simon that's over here as well. They all happen to call Simon today. And we've Lorna down there and Gráinne Hennessy, who I met last year, who sort of connected me with Arthur Cox in the first place through Bank of Ireland. And lovely to see corporates all collaborating. And here we are all today together as a result. So I'm going to tell you a bit about myself. I'm a mum of 3 boys. I am from Monaghan. I have Dara, who is 11, Jamie is 7, and Kyle is 3. I play music. I play in a rock band, and I also do my Lean in Ireland stuff, and I commute quite a bit. So I spend about 4.5 hours in a car most days working in Dublin. So, and I guess Lean in has brought me into a whole new world altogether, and I'm hoping that it's going to do the same for you. The reason I think I became a bit of a feminist is because I joined the Reserve Defence Forces when I was 17. And a very competitive kid, went in there and met all of the boys in the army, and they all told me that girls should never have been allowed into the army, Breda. And I thought, oh, God. So I proved them wrong, and I worked hard with them, and I trained hard with them. And in 1999, then they commissioned me a lieutenant. So I think that kind of was a feminist born. And then roll on to a couple of years back, I was working in a bank, and we set up a female network in there. And I found that the women in the female network that I was organising events with were starting to mentor each other. And that was the first time I'd had female mentors, because they were all guys in the army. All my mentors had been men, and still have male mentors. But I just thought, God, there's real value in this for women mentoring each other. It's really, really powerful. I went off looking to see what Lean In was about, because I knew I'd read about it somewhere, and I am a nut on Twitter, as you probably all have discovered at this stage, and LinkedIn. And I found Lean In. I found Lean In Northern Ireland, and some of the ladies are here tonight from the Belfast Lean In chapter, and discovered there was no Lean in Ireland at that stage. So we set it up. So myself and Nuala Murphy decided, right, well, let's just get going. So we did our first event last year down in the Facebook offices, this time last year actually. And some of tonight's audience, I met one woman earlier, she was on the panel with us last year. 3 circles were on the leanin.org website when we started, and at the moment there's 31 circles. So this thing just keeps growing, and it's very easy to see, the appetite that even tonight's event draws. So there's a serious hunger there amongst women around their career, and I think the Unapologetically Ambitious tagline seems to have drawn a hell of a lot of attention, which tells you that a lot of us are probably wondering about, we're more apologetic sometimes about being ambitious, and that's what I want to explore on the panel this evening. I'd also ask you to do some posts and pics for me, because we want to get the word out that Lean in Ireland is here. We want to raise awareness, and we want other people starting circles. And we want to encourage you all to have a look at the leanin.org website. See, is there a circle there that you'd like to join, or start your own? Start your own within your company. Bank of Ireland have started their first one on International Women's Day. So we have one going there, and it's so easy to set up. There's a few women here that are in it. It's easy, but it's so rewarding. We're going to start a second one very soon and grow it slowly, and probably Arthur Cox, similar pattern. So try this in your companies. Don't be shy. It's very, very easy to do. And without further ado, I want to invite the panel now, which is very exciting. I have some brilliant women to have conversations with tonight, so I'm really looking forward to getting this conversation going. So I'd ask the panel to come up and join me here on the seats. I'm going to take the orange seat. And I'm going to introduce them all to you in a wee second. And then they're going to introduce themselves to you as well. They'll do a much better job. But we start here with Mema Byrne, barrister with 4 courts. We'll give you a warm welcome, Mema. Join me, ladies and gents. We have Fiona Mullen, who's the head of international HR for Facebook. We have Jennifer Cahill, who is, as I call her, the head hunter, the Savvy Recruitment Consultants. And we have Una Kelly, who's just joined New Ireland Assurance as head of HR. So we're going to start the discussion now. Can I just give you some timings before we get stuck in, just in case anyone's wondering when their next comfort break is. So at 6:45, we will hopefully be starting our question and answers. So I want you all thinking about what questions you have as we go through the discussions. And then we go out there and we'll have some networking, some more wine. And I want you to get to know each other out there with a view to trying to get your lean-in circles, get those up and running, or at least learn a bit more from each other out there, because you're all here for the same reason. So, I don't know who to start with here. I'm spoiled for choice. We'll go to Mema first, just because you are unfortunate to sit beside me. So Mema, tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about what comes to mind for you when we introduce the theme Unapologetically Ambitious.
Okay, my name is Mema Byrne. I'm a barrister. I've been a barrister for 15 years. I also have 3 children who are 20, 12 and 10. So I'm kind of out of the woods with a lot of the heavy-duty parenting. What comes to mind when I think of Unapologetically Ambitious? Well, we set up a lean-in circle in the Law Library to promote positive networking opportunities and to be unapologetic about saying to, we bring solicitors out once a term and we say, would you like to come out for a meal? And it's in a gang. There's safety in that. It's not one woman saying to one male solicitor, would you like to go out for dinner? To thank you for the briefs or whatever. We're in a group, it's a professional group, we go to the King's Inns to eat, and we're quite unapologetic about putting ourselves out there and networking and promoting ourselves. So that's what comes to mind.
Brilliant. So no better woman for a panel tonight, as you can see. And so we go to Fiona Mullen. Fiona, so tell us a bit about yourself, first of all.
It's great to be here, by the way. I worked with Facebook about 4 years. And I don't work with Sheryl Sandberg every day, so just to be clear. But it is interesting having the kind of influence of Sheryl, obviously, in our own organisation, and that sets a certain standard for us, and obviously very high expectations for women in their careers. For me personally, I've spent most of my career in HR. I didn't intend to be here, but that's as things fell. I've always been in the tech sector, so all the things I've learned about my career and women's careers in particular has been in that environment, particularly in the US tech environment. I am a single mum. I've got 2 girls, 14, Sive is 14 and Alva is 11. And so I think the unapologetically ambitious for me, I would say secretly ambitious, which is kind of the slightly embarrassed ambitious, but there's nothing like no choice. When you have to provide for your family and when you have a responsibility, for me the deal was always, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well. And any time I spend working, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to do work that helps me grow, and I'm going to be a person who comes home after doing my work, someone who's fulfilled, and the quality time I have with my kids is just that. And so I've always tried to ensure that I'm in an environment and I'm doing work that really fulfills me. And so that there isn't, it doesn't mean it goes perfectly every day, of course, but there isn't that kind of tension that often one feels when one isn't doing particularly enjoyable work, but also has huge other responsibilities. So that would be my kind of connection with the ambitious which is slightly embarrassed, I would say.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, Fiona. And Jen, so tell us a bit about yourself and then a bit about the unapologetically ambitious piece, what it means for you.
Yeah, so I'm Jennifer Cahill. I set up Savvy Recruitment Consultants with Therese Cadell, my partner, last year. I'm 7 years in recruitment, financial recruitment this year, but I was a tax advisor originally, so I sort of changed tact about 6 years into that, and people thought I was crazy. Why would I leave a professional qualification to go into something as crude as recruitment? But it's, thankfully, touch wood, it's all worked out well. In terms of me personally, I'm a mum of two. Unlike Mema, I'm sort of in the woods. I have a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. It can be difficult to kind of marry the two. In terms of unapologetically ambitious, I think I would have always been described as ambitious. I was very competitive as a child. I'm the eldest of 6. I have 4 brothers, but I was never brought up to think that that was in any way an impediment, you know, and I think that has sort of stood to me. Probably credit my parents with that. So I think when I got into the workforce and saw that, you know, maybe there was a point at which, you know, that did come against you and suddenly your male counterparts were more able to kind of push forward. I always did kind of find that quite annoying and resist it. And I suppose being self-employed is, for me, my answer, and me being unapologetically ambitious, I suppose, to say, look, this needs to work for me. I want to marry the two. And so hence made the decision to do that last year. So it does, it resonates with me quite a lot. And I'm sure for a lot of other people in the audience.
Super. Thank you, Jen. And to Una. Una, tell us a bit about yourself and then how you feel about the unapologetically ambitious.
Thanks, Brita. Excuse me. So, Una Kelly, and I've been in HR for over 20 years. I've worked in a variety of different organisations, but a lot of financial services. I'm a mum of 3. I have 3 girls. So that keeps me on my toes, and I'm kind of slightly in the woods and slightly not in the woods. So I have a 14-year-old, 9.5-year-old, and a 6.5-year-old. But my 14-year-old is now almost ready to babysit on a regular basis, which I'm quite delighted about. I see it as a big life stage for me. So in terms of the unapologetically ambitious theme, I think the thing that really sprang to mind actually was, and I think a lot of women have experienced this, where you know, you're working, and if you're a mum and you have a lot of things going on in your life and you're sort of trying to, you know, remember who you are as a person, and you wear a lot of different hats, and people sometimes say, well, I don't know how you do it. Like, how do you do that? And that always actually really annoys me, because I always feel, well, why wouldn't I do it? Like, why couldn't I have a great career and have a great family and, you know, juggle these different things? So why wouldn't I give it my best shot? So I feel like that's kind of something that I owe to myself, is to go all in and give it your best shot and be at your best, and not kind of do it in a half-hearted way of kind of going, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't really be doing it, maybe I should be somewhere else. It's actually be where you are and own that and go all in.
Excellent. Beautiful. Thank you, ladies. What a lovely start. Yeah. Oh, lovely. Okay, so my next question, and we'll start that side, Una. She tries to get a drink of water.
Ready?
So I want some examples of when you have been unapologetically ambitious yourself, and give us an example of a female leader that has inspired you and why.
Okay, so a time when I've been unapologetically ambitious is probably quite a lot of the time, but I can think of one time in particular where I was interviewing for a promotion internally, and I was pregnant at the time. And even though it's highly illegal, I was asked the killer question, you know, how will you cope? If you get this job, how will you manage? And so I was very frank and gave my feedback about what I thought about that question, and said, you know, that really is not an appropriate question. And while I was on maternity leave, I chose to change job and said, those are not my values, this is not the kind of organisation that I want to be part of any longer, and that really isn't appropriate. I'm going to move on. And when I went to resign, you know, the organisation said, is there anything we can do? And I said, well, yeah, there's quite a lot you can do, actually, and nothing that you can do for me, because I'm not going to stay here, but there's plenty you can do for yourselves. That's really important. And my parting gift is that you do something to address that attitude. And I think that they have, and I know other people who've remained and succeeded, but that's something that, you know, I kind of felt was a really important thing to have done at that time.
Absolutely. Super. And tell us about a female leader that has inspired you.
So I'm trying to think, there's quite a few, actually. And I kind of think a lot of you know, a lot of the time you can kind of pick a mentor or role model who's, you know, like a really senior global figure. But actually, I like to take a lot of my friends, like people who, you know, really espouse the values that I like to live as well, and people that I spend time with. So I kind of think, you know, if those are the behaviours of people that I want to be with, and I like, you know, spending time with them, I enjoy how that makes me feel, I think it's a really good dynamic. Those are people that I see as role models in my life.
Brilliant. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And we'll come to Mema. So Mema, examples of when you've been unapologetically ambitious yourself, and then I'll come to an example of a female leader. Inspiring.
Well, I think like Fiona, in my earlier career years, I was maybe secretly or repressed ambitious. I'm not even sure it was secret. My ambition has grown with age and confidence as well, I have to say. But I'm not sure if everyone here knows how the barrister career works. You're self-employed, so you start off in your first year, you just train under somebody else, and you wait like a taxi at a rank to see will somebody employ you for a case. So in your first 5 years, as you can imagine, when people have any other barrister to choose from, they typically don't choose the very junior ones a lot, and you don't have much of an income. So there is a decision at the beginning of a career at the bar, particularly if you're having children. So I had 2 children in the first 4 years at the bar, and this is my pet hate. Women who say, oh, I'm not paying, my career doesn't pay for the childcare. That drives me bananas. I think then I probably was unapologetically ambitious, and I didn't call it that or recognize it. But I think you have to, at some points in your career, invest in the career. And it may be an investment, it may be that it's not paying a lot, or it's not covering the childcare. I hate that. But maybe that is the case very, very short term, and that is something that you're going to have to ride through. So at that time, I would have lectured quite a lot. You know, you would have had other jobs that would be very typical for a barrister to take on in their first 5 years. A female leader, the only person I can think of that really made a massive impact on me over the years was our headmistress at school, and also my first boyfriend's mother was...
I didn't expect that, Mema.
She had been a single parent. She had been working in the arts, kept her career going. I'd never met anyone like that. I mean, my mum had been a housewife. Most of the mums I knew, all my friends' mums, were housewives. And I just thought she was like a dynamo. I'd never met a woman like that. And she had a massive impact on me as a young woman, looking at her thinking, wow, like she's working. She was working when she had a child on her own, and she was also very charismatic and glamorous. So when you put the whole package together, I was like, I want to be her when I grow up.
And I think you really are her. I think we would definitely describe you as a dynamo, definitely.
Well, we're not going there.
He wasn't as good as the mother.
No comment.
No comment. Okay, brilliant. So, Fiona, examples of when you have been unapologetically ambitious yourself, and then an example of a female leader that has inspired you.
So for me, there's been points in time when an opportunity arose within the companies that I have worked for, and oftentimes they involved like a pretty immediate decision to go and do something and kind of uplift family or take on something. The first I'd say was, you know, a previous company, I had an opportunity literally within a couple of days to go and take on my peer's job in China. Based in Dublin, get on a flight, go to Beijing and be there kind of week in, week out until they'd hired her successor. And I thought, gosh, what a place to learn. This is like, you know, frontier. to see how we were doing business there. And I knew it wasn't going to be forever, but I thought, gosh, I really wanted to explore that experience. And from that, I was then subsequently offered a job to go and move out to Asia and be based in Singapore, which we then, moved family and spent a number of years out there. And I just learned a huge amount. I realized that I just couldn't get that kind of experience where I was still. And not only was it a professional adventure, it was also very much a personal adventure. And then at Facebook, this time last year, my boss offered me to go to the US for the summer. She was taking sabbatical and would I do her job for 4 months. And I was like, okay, how do I do this? There's me and the kids. She said, bring the kids with you. Bring whoever you need to look after the kids. So off we went for 3 months and sat in near Palo Alto. And I went to work every day. And I brought my young cousin who looked after the kids. And they had this kind of world into the life of Facebook. And I just kind of operated around and kind of altitude in the organization that I'd never seen before. And at the end of that, I got promoted. And my boss wrote my kids a letter. And she wrote the letter to them to say, thank you for giving us your mum for the few months. Here's all the things we love about her, and she's done so well. And it was like having the report card that your parents got at one point, except it was my two girls, and they kind of scoffed and thought this was really embarrassing. And secretly, I think they were proud. So, I guess my point is sometimes you just have to throw caution to the wind and figure it out on the fly and just take a chance. The person I'll probably speak to is a colleague of mine now. Her name is Nicola Mendelsohn. She runs our business in EMEA, and she's my age when she was going to be the main leader I was going to work with when I joined Facebook, and I never heard of her before, and I did some research, and she seemed to be a really interesting character, and I've learned a huge amount from her. But one of the things that I have learned is that she's just who she is. She's very feminine. She's very girly. She's exceptionally business-minded. She's a lot of fun. She's really supportive to women. And she hasn't sacrificed the things about her that really make her a female leader. I think there's not all of us who can say that truly, who've made it to a very, very senior level. And so she just inspires me every day because she's superhuman and just has those qualities that she's kept true to herself through that journey.
Brilliant. Wow, that's class. Thank you so much, Fiona. And now, Jen. So examples of when you've been unapologetically ambitious yourself and then a female role model.
Yeah, well, I think it comes back to the self-employment piece. And I think when I first came back from maternity leave, I thought it was fine. And then sort of probably 9 months after, I kind of felt like I'd lost my nerve. I'd kind of moved jobs and I thought, well, God, maybe I did this too quickly. I'd had the confidence in myself to take the step up and take that job. But sort of the doubt started to creep in. I started to feel the pressure. Started to be, there was pressures internally that I thought, maybe shifts in unconscious bias that maybe weren't so fair. And I just began to feel that, and I lost my nerve a little bit. And I kind of put my hand up to take a step back. And I thought that would be the answer. That would help me feel like I was balancing home a little bit better and I was balancing work. And I could continue to, just kind of cruise. I could stay working, but I thought, yeah, I'll just get happy with this. Maybe I can't drive on at this point. Maybe I just have to go into kind of second gear a little bit for this period of time till the kids get a little bit older. And after a few months in that mode, I realised, God, no, this is not for, there's just something in me that will not allow this. Yeah. So I kind of realised that because I thought, okay, on paper, that's what makes sense. And I did it. And I just realised, no, you're just going against your nature here. You want to push on. You need to, it's just in me. I think anybody who's ambitious, it's just integral to who you are. It kind of burns inside you. So I realised then that, maybe the structures where I am are not allowing me to fulfil that in a way where I can also feel like I'm contributing at home and I'm not kind of letting things slide so much there. So then last year, as I kind of alluded to earlier, I made the decision to become self-employed, and I'm delighted with that, and it's a big decision to make. I have to say, it actually felt really liberating when I'd made that decision because, people would say on paper, God, are you mad? You're crazy. And I was actually 6 weeks pregnant when I left my job to become self-employed, and people would say, you can't have known. Surely you did not know you were pregnant. So I said, no, I knew I was pregnant. But I wanted to do it. The momentum was there. I believed in myself. I kind of because I'd taken the step back, I realized that isn't the answer either. You know what I mean? You've got to push on. You need that for yourself, but you need to find something where you can marry the two. So I suppose making that step and coming together with Therese to form Savvy Recruitment Consultants is probably my unapologetically ambitious step. And I'm delighted I did it, and you feel a huge freedom as a result of it, because I just don't feel as constricted. You know, I'm there to please myself and Therese and clients, but I find that easier. I've just more freedom for it. So that was my answer. In terms of somebody, I think I kind of empathise with Una and others in terms of being, you know, there are people in the public eye, but when I was growing up, I had very strong female role models within my family. So my grandmother, for example, was a teacher. My grandfather stayed at home and kind of farmer and, you know, pretty much raised the kids while she went out to teach. And I'm from Cavan originally, so she was on the border and she qualified in Donegal to be a teacher, but then they had to move to the north. And at the time, you couldn't transfer the qualification across. So as a married woman, she got off to the UK to retrain as a teacher so that she could continue to teach in the north. She wasn't going to allow that to stop her. And I always really admired that tenacity in her. You know, she just was like, of course, you know, there was never any, God, it was, you know, the kids and having to leave them. It was just, this was who she was. She wanted to teach. She loved teaching. You know, if they needed to live in Northern Ireland, then she was going to find a way to make sure that she could continue to teach. And she raised 4 very strong daughters in behind her. So they were my role models in terms of being able to strive forward, and education was always really important. And as a girl, as it was for any males in my family, it was go get yourself an education and the world is your oyster. If you work hard enough, you can achieve whatever you want.
Good, excellent. Thank you very much. And we're going to a new question now, and I'm going to start with Una, given your HR sort of position. So I want to talk about women who feel that they have to have 100% experience and skills before they apply for a job. And we all have done that, I'm sure. And why men are sitting at a 60%. And what can we do as individuals, everyone here, to address that?
So if I had my way, it was interesting to hear Simon talking about unconscious bias training earlier, actually, and having, you know, done some unconscious bias training myself, it was really eye-opening. I actually found, you know, all of those biases and you think, oh, I couldn't have that many, really. And then you go and you do something like that and it really opens your eyes to what goes on around you. And also just kind of challenges some of your own perceptions, so it's very worthwhile. So that's something that I think actually every organisation should pay attention to. I also think that, I suppose, from a career development perspective, one of the things that I hear consistently from people is, I don't always know when there are career opportunities. And I'd always kind of had the view that, you know, if you were good enough, you'd get promoted. And then as I moved through my career, I realised that's actually not the case. Because you need a strong advocate, you need a champion, you need somebody who will, you know, sing your praises when you're not there, somebody who will champion your cause, mind your brand for you when you're not around. And organisations don't really work that way. And so there isn't a lot of investment in creating those conditions for people to advance. And so because I think a lot of women, particularly if they have children, are very focused on, you know, not being a certain way and not being too ambitious and taking care of the kids and making sure everyone has shoes that fit them and the laundry's done and, you know, all these different things. They're not minding their brand and they're not paying attention to actually, you know, do I have a champion? Do I have an advocate? Do I have a mentor? Do I have someone who's helping me to navigate my career in the right way? And so, you know, I think it's fair to say that on any given day, a lot of men are not necessarily thinking about whether everyone at home has shoes to fit them. And if the school uniforms have been washed, now that's a sweeping generalisation, I realise, but I think it's reasonably accurate a good chunk of the time. And so can be present and can be thinking about, you know, is this a workshop I need to be at, or is this something I should go to, or is there someone I can talk to get involved? And so as a result, actually, I, you know, from an HR perspective, really pay attention to creating those conditions and really encourage and really try and apply that thinking to, you know, workshops, events, a lot of social interaction in the workplace and building that social capital that can happen in the evening or at the crack of dawn, which very often doesn't suit women, actually. So you have to be open to challenging those things. And I think those are small changes that can help to create the conditions whereby women are more likely to put their hand up and say, well, look, I know that person, or that person's helped me, or I was at that workshop, or I was on that training event, so maybe I don't have the perfect CV for that particular role, but I know I can do it. And they will have those people in their corner who will help them to reach in and to lean in and say, I could do that, and I think I'd be really good at that. And maybe I don't have the fully, baked set of skills at my disposal, but with the right tools and support, I'd get there really quickly, and I think I'd be really good at that. And I think that's one of the things that really needs to change.
Okay. So we're all going to work on that tonight, right? Brilliant. And then I'm coming to Jen with the same question, because many a time I've had lunch with Jen and Therese, and some of the stories they have told me actually probably sparked the reason for the theme for tonight, because some of the stories they have told me around having to coach women to actually even go for jobs that they should have been well fit to do, and how guys just have this lovely, innate confidence that don't need that kind of coaching. So I want to hear some of that from you, Jen.
Yeah, and I suppose Therese and I and people in recruitment probably take it for granted that this is what we see. But yeah, we were just talking earlier actually, and if we have, for example, a director roll up, we will often and frequently get 25-year-old men who are maybe 3 years out of college who will apply for that job. And when you ring them and tell them, maybe a little bit off, you don't have the required experience, they will by and large kind of test you on that. They will challenge a little bit around, and we might laugh, but you do have to admire that aspirational thinking, going, I want to be what that title is, so I'm going to apply for it, because if I just keep applying for it, then maybe one day I'm going to be that.
Yeah.
Whereas women, we've never ever had a case where I've had to ring a woman and tell her, it's a little bit beyond, you know what I mean? I'm not sure you're ready for that role. By and large, if a woman applies for a job, she is 100% qualified for it. And we do meet women, because again, people apply for jobs and we will know candidates over a period of time. And we do have to pick up the phone and go, look, I have this job, I think it's ideal for you. Really? And they will sit and for half an hour. And what I find very humbling is even very senior women, and you might think, oh, maybe it's the preserve of women who are just starting out in their careers, or they're at middle management. I've met partners in law firms, I've met directors, and women that you would think, God, they have it sorted, they're pretty confident in themselves. And one woman spent a half an hour outlining, coming from a partner level, she'd taken a few years out, why she wasn't equipped to take on a director level role, so a step down. I remember looking at her going, seriously? I was like, you can't do this at interview, firstly, okay? You can only do this with me. And then I'm going to tell you why it is that you are overqualified for this job and you should go to it. And, it really startles me all the time, and I think that stat is absolutely accurate. And I think it's, women seem to need more positive reinforcement. Come back to what Una was saying, these mentors or, friends, or like the lean-in circles, where you just have other women going, go for it. What's to be lost from just applying for that job? I always say to people, there's nothing to be lost from having a conversation. If you go for a job and you're not qualified for it, you take some constructive criticism away from it, and you're stronger and you're better for the next time, because interviewing is a skill. If you hold back till you get the absolute ideal job, you might not be interview ready for it. So if I was to advise people, I'd say, look, go for it. Any job description we get, hiring managers would be like, look, ideally, that's what I'd like to get. Realistically, they're already prepared to maybe only get 60 or 70% of it. So if you hold out for the 100%, you're missing out, because if you compare the candidate who got the job with the job spec that originally came out, by and large, there's only about 50 or 60% of an overlap. And attitude is actually 50% of it. You can take a box. I always say both the CV and the job description are so one-dimensional. You walk into a room, it's the rapport between, we're people, and our business is difficult because you're dealing with people. We're not an exact science. You walk into a room, there's just a chemistry, there's a feel, I think that place would really work for me. I like the kind of vibe I got from that. And that's a huge part on behalf of the employer as well. They'll walk in and go, do you know what? She might be missing that technical bit that we'd like to ideally get if we could, but my God, really impressive. And she shows the aptitude and the ambition to want to get up to speed, and she kind of gave me the confidence that she would get up to speed on whatever it was she might fall down on. So that happens every day. So I would say to anybody who's looking at a job or thinking, I'm not quite there yet and I haven't started applying, to apply. Because you will learn, you will gain from it, regardless of whether you get that first job you apply for. Keep doing it, because you'll inform yourself by doing that.
Okay, brilliant. So we're all going to be applying for jobs tonight, and we're going to be persistent. Right, got it. Okay, so, and I know, Fiona, you're in the HR field as well, so I'm sure you have some sort of experience or views.
Yeah,
on
look,
this
I think
as well.
it is a bit of a perennial issue. Like, I was struck today. I had some students in from a university who'd done a project for our team, like an MBA project, and there was 4 of them, 2 women and 2 men in their 20s, and lo and behold, 2 two guys are doing the presentation, two girls are sitting down at the table. Like, how? And so it's just, I'm not sure whether they drew lots or whether they were just more, pushy to get the slots, but like they didn't, didn't shine. So I was really keen to see, whether somebody sitting at the table who happened to be of a different gender would have kind of grabbed the mic and take over a little bit. But, we need to see, something a little bolder. I would say, though, I guess our experience at Facebook is a little different in the sense that many of our jobs nobody's ever done before. And so it's, in a way, quite a leveler in that, we're looking for transferable skills, okay, but really looking for people to demonstrate adaptability. And we try and really enable people, set them up for success. We give them as much information as they could possibly, consume about the company, about the environment, about the job, about the team, about what that work is, and then let them piece it apart and kind of put it back together again and make connections with it. And it is the creativity and the ingenuity and the ability to bring themselves to the work that really comes across at interview. And so I'm an optimist, so I look into the future and I think jobs will change and are changing, and it is that adaptability that really people will bring into the workplace. And I think women have that in spades, and so I think that's where I would focus and encourage people to really think about that environment, because once you start in a company, really oftentimes it's your previous experience. At least in our environment, it doesn't matter. We start day one. It's like back the clock, start again, and you have a whole new kind of platform to just start and reinvent yourself in many ways. So I think that's helpful because you're not dragging with you some of the history that you've had in other places. You just kind of start afresh.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Fiona. And Mama, do you have that experience down in the forecourts?
Ours is slightly different again because of the self-employment. There isn't an interview situation, but there is, and it's something Arlene in Circle works on, there is the elevator pitch. What do you do? You'll have girls who've got a first in law in university, they're extremely intelligent, they're brilliant on their feet, and they'll say, oh, should I just do a bit of, just a bit of commercial work, it's just, a guy who has done one case in one area will be telling people in the same environment, I'm an expert in defamation. He's done one defamation case. And I'm not saying he's wrong or she's wrong, but it's typically, like you say, it's a perennial problem that the girls are downplaying their skills or abilities. The boys are talking up their skills and abilities, and therefore there seems to be quite a large gap between that. But I actually think it's something that's really easy to learn. So I think that's the good news. I think if you find yourself saying the word only, or staring at your feet sometimes and going, oh, you can actually get rid of all of those tics. And they're quite easy to get rid of once you become aware of them. So I think there's a bit of good news there. It's not like we're stuck with this as a problem. It's people just need to become aware. Am I not applying for things? Am I not promoting myself? What am I doing that's downplaying myself on purpose? Yeah. Like for no reason. Yep. So one of the things our Lean In group do is we have a WhatsApp group, and we send each other messages about roles that are on the go. So let's say Mental Health Tribunal are looking for chairpersons. We'll say closing date, 9th of October, get your CVs in, girls, and encourage each other to go for roles that barristers take on in addition to our normal court work.
Yeah. So no staring at feet. That's what I wrote down here. And no only.
Yeah, no.
I want to see those up on social media posts, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So I think we go to Una to start with this one. I'm going to ask you a question about women. Do you think that they realise their own value in terms of their career and also their role in society? And do women need to raise their expectations and aim higher?
So yes, I think women do. I think it was interesting in terms of what Mem and Fiona were saying about women going, well, you know, I just do this, and it is I like that, you know, women in a meeting syndrome, you know, where women do kind of go, sorry, can I just say one thing? And maybe you've probably thought about this already, but you know, just saying, and you're going, own it, just own it and say it. So I think that's really important. I think for women as well, there can be a tendency to, you know, do quite a lot of negative comparing. And, you know, oh, if only I looked like that, or if only I was taller, thinner, richer, had a nicer handbag, better shoes, the list goes on. I think women do that and hold themselves back. And so what I always say and what I say to my girls is be really good at being yourself. Do that, be amazing at being yourself, and look up. Don't look down, look up. And so I think if there's one thing that, you know, women could do for themselves, you know, we should all do that and look up and not down, and own it, you know, be really good at it. So, you know, the unapologetic theme really strikes a chord with me because I do find it very frustrating. And I suppose financial services can be quite male dominated and you don't necessarily find that many women in senior positions. So, you know, when you do speak in a meeting or a workshop, you sound very different. Your voice is very different to all the other voices in the room. So possibly the worst thing you could do is then, you know, reinforce that by apologising. So don't apologise, own it, and lean forward. And you have great things to say, and believe in yourself and back yourself. So I absolutely think that women need to do more of that.
Brilliant. So own it and look up, not down. Would be the tagline for that post. Fiona, do you want to take that one next for me? So it's about women realising their own value in terms of the career and also in society, because I'm not sure women actually realise the role they play in society, in work and outside of work. Because I know women who do amazing work. They do all of the community stuff, all the kids stuff in the evening, all the birthdays and Christmases, and they arrange everything. And they don't realise the value that brings, and they're the same in work.
No, I think it's a really interesting point, and I think work is changing. I think that actually what women are bringing into the work environment is really, really valuable because they're challenging how we engage, what we talk about, how we treat each other. And initially, I think, you know, many were apologetically asking for change, and I think now we're demanding it, and I think that's really healthy. I also think it's really great for men. I don't think men, particularly of the Gen Y generation, they don't want to be stereotyped in, you know, the breadwinner for the family, of the stay-at-home wife. That's not necessarily, maybe for some, but that's not what I see in the next generation. They want, you know, portfolio careers where they can, you know, do different things, they can take time out, they spend more time with their families, and you know, I think that having more women in the workplace is, you know, opening up that conversation of shared parenthood in particular. You know, we've introduced paternity leave for 4 months for fathers. Oh my God, goodness, what a change that has brought, because for the first time men are actually experiencing the return to work syndrome post, you know, being at home. And do they still like me? Am I still good at my job? What have I missed? Is it okay to be at home and not, like, you know, getting online? Like, that's really good because they can only, you know, talk about unconscious bias. You can only really appreciate somebody else's situation if you're in their shoes and if you really live that experience. And not least, obviously, you know, some small measure towards evolving our society towards shared parenthood rather than sitting on the shoulders of mothers alone. So I think that is helpful. I do think women now, you know, maybe more in the last 12 months than any other time before, are really standing up and owning their role in society and demanding to be heard on so many levels. You know, and I think it's really important in our own society, obviously, you know, in the debates that we're having. So I think that's really healthy. I think it's hard, and there are tough conversations going on in families and in relationships and in work, and they're uncomfortable. And I think people like me in HR positions often used to say, look, kind of leave that outside, like all that stuff that's hard, like it's political stuff, leave it outside because, you know, that's for your personal perspective. And I think now we're being much braver. Bring it into the workplace. You know, we can help with change. And so I think that's encouraging, but it's like there's a long road ahead. And I think, you know, the generation behind me, at least, will certainly benefit more than my peers have.
Yeah. Yep. Brilliant. Thank you, Fiona. And I guess to that point then, Mema, around women and valuing themselves, and particularly around raising their expectations and aiming higher. So I don't know, because, and something around the stats that Simon mentioned earlier, you used to remember Simon talking some numbers earlier, but so there's leanin.org, there's lots and lots of research on it. They did a Women in the Workplace survey last year, and across all industries, pretty much all industries, they found that there's somewhere around 60 to 65% of women at the lower grades across all the companies. And then they looked at the senior grades, and you're down to 10% of women. So, you know, you don't need to be a mathematician to work that out. So you lose a lot of women across the pipeline as they go up the ranks. They just drop off. So you have a poor pipeline then at the top when you're trying to pick your senior leaders is the first problem for the corporate. But I'm not sure if women are actually aiming for them roles, because a lot of women, so I talk to a lot of women on a week-to-week basis continuously, and a lot of them would tell me, I don't want to go to a senior role. You know, I'd be asking them, what's your career progression look like? What would you like to do? And a lot of them would say, I don't want a senior level, or I don't want to be an exco member. No, that comes with a price. And then when I start pulling at the strings around, well, what do you mean comes with a price? And they say, oh, well, that's long hours, and that'd be working late evenings and all weekends. And then I say, right, so you're not working long hours and weekends. And they're going, oh, well, I am, but. And so then I'm starting to explore sort of why they're talking themselves out of, they're not even aiming for those senior roles. And they're lowering their expectations all the time, which then, is a pure negative, long-term for a woman.
Well, I think in the Law Library, what we see is we only have 16% senior counsel. So we have a lot of, what Simon said really resonated with me, really talented, intelligent, personable, charismatic women coming into the law, and to see only 16% up at senior counsel level. The Bar Council has developed a women's working group to look at that. There are initiatives, I suppose, being commenced to see if that can be addressed. But ultimately, it comes down to demand. And if companies don't demand that the firms that they employ, who employ barristers, use female barristers, that's not going to change. And if solicitors' firms don't say, yes, we're going to use female barristers for commercial cases and big cases and, cases where traditionally they're slotting men into that role, women aren't going to make the jump to senior counsel because it won't be worth it for them. So I think Hewlett-Packard recently their general counsel has said that unless the solicitors' firms they use employ a diversity strategy that they have defined, they're holding back 10% of their billing fees. Yeah. And in Australia, they have an equitable briefing policy. And they are, I suppose, structural changes that can make a huge difference. And unless the larger companies out there make a demand for that, I don't see a huge amount changing. So where, as barristers, we really see a difference is from the state. The state has kind of made it its business to employ, if there's a revenue case on, or if there's prosecution cases, the HSC, where the state is involved, it's made a real effort to try address diversity and make sure that there is, I wouldn't say equal amount, but coming up to equal amount of women being used. We don't see that coming from the big 5 law firms, just as an example, or even the next 5 medium law firms. So that's really the message, I suppose, that female barristers are really, really working on at the moment.
Yeah, so tone from the top. Okay, so then we have a question here. I want to talk about women and wealth, and it's something actually we ended up talking about earlier, just coincidentally. But so I don't think, and traditionally, and the stats will tell you that women do not have as much wealth behind them compared to men, right? And I want to talk about what women need to do to earn more, first of all, because that's very easily, you know, getting you on the path to wealth. And it's kind of related to the question I talked about earlier, why we don't think we want to go for those senior roles. So we should want to, and we should want more money. And why, and how should we be concentrating on our long-term goals in terms of wealth? Because women are going to retire at some point, and women are perhaps, you know, going to find themselves in a case where they have kids that they want to put through college. So, you know, these are important goals for a lot of people, and I want to retire very comfortably. So I think, you know, a lot of women maybe aren't thinking of this, and they rely on a lot of their men, partners perhaps, to sort of sort out the finances and think about the long-term stuff. So what can we do to get women starting to think like that, first of all, and then how can we get them to sort of work on increasing their wealth, to see the importance of that? So who wants to take this?
I think in terms of pay, and we would see this a lot in terms of, you know, when we're working with clients, and particularly, and it is a generalization, but by and large, women are not as good as men at negotiating on their way into a job or when they're in that job. Maybe a little bit more inclined to wait for somebody to say, you deserve that pay rise, you know, you should go out, or you should go for that position, you know, to get that validation that, yeah, it's the right time, or, you know, I should go for that. What I've seen, and I've learned from my own experience over the years, is women tend to be more emotive in pay negotiations. You know, I feel, or, you know, they feel like they're, you know, and I would say to women, leave the emotion at the door. You know, it's a contract of employment at the end of the day where you work. It's not your father or your mother you're going in to negotiate with. You know, you're offering up services, in return you're getting, you know, if you want to be very clinical about it. But that's what men do really well. They don't fear that they can't go out for a pint with the guy that they've had a terse enough kind of pay conversation with earlier that day. Women kind of have the fear going, oh, it might be a little bit awkward maybe after that, and maybe maybe we strive for the likability factor more than men. I don't know what that is in us, but they're uncomfortable, those conversations, but the only way you get more comfortable with them is continue to have them. You know, push back a little bit, know your worth, and again, it comes back to the value, and do that in a very commercial way. You know, what have you saved the company if you're in a business development role? What have you brought in the company? What have you generated for them? You know, distill it down into very, very commercial terms, because that's what businesses understand. At the end of the day, you're sitting in front of somebody who is probably, you know, they have a P&L, they're a cost owner in a business. They will pay you if it makes sense to keep you and you're generating income, or you're saving them money. Then it's a commercial thing of going, okay, well, there's value there, we should pay to keep that person. Particularly in this environment right now, the cost of replacing people that you lose, and again, Fiona and Una will know this very well, is huge. In a market that is now a lot more active than it was 2-3 years ago, it's very, very difficult to get talent across the board and across all disciplines. So it can take longer. You've got a gap where somebody, that position is vacant. So companies don't want to lose. I think women will sit back and go, oh God, I missed out on that. I'm really annoyed, or I feel like I didn't get that pay rise, so I'll just leave. So we need to be having those conversations. I think we need to communicate more with our superiors in terms of, look at you know, I need to get paid more, I want to go for that promotion. Communicate your ambition. You know, make sure that they understand that. Don't assume that somebody will naturally understand, oh, well, they're not interested in that, or, you know what I mean? So it's the responsibility, it's on us to communicate that out as well, and to be vocal about it. And I suppose that's the unapologetically ambitious. Don't be afraid to vocalize when you sit down for your annual review and say, look, this is where I want to go, this is where I see myself. You know, and get the constructive feedback as to what the steps are. And, you know, that's a lot of what Therese and I do every day. It's, you know, looking at, okay, where do you want to be? And the next step might not get you there directly. You might have to take a couple of steps in between, but you've got to look at it clinically, you know, and as, you know, Una said, it's about owning your own success. You've got to take charge of it. You've got to be clinical about it. And as I said, in pay negotiations, where it comes back to wealth, you've got to leave the emotion at the door, and it can be hugely successful when you do that, because when you bring it back to brass tacks and commercial realities, you'd be very pleasantly surprised at where people go, okay, yes, I agree, actually, you are maybe underpaid and you do deserve a pay rise. They're not going to offer it to you if you're happy to work for a lower amount, that's for sure, because commercially that's just not going to happen. So if you want a pay rise, if you feel you deserve one, then you need to go in and ask for it.
Yeah, okay. And can I come to Mama next, because I know we were talking about exactly this around wealth, and women not just should look after their wealth and take an interest in it, but should have goals for how much they want to earn and how much they want to have in terms of their wealth.
Yeah, I think everything we've been talking about until now feeds into that. I think putting yourself forward, promoting yourself, getting yourselves into groups where you encourage each other will naturally boost your income, because you will feel confident to take the steps of asking for the increase. But then once you're there, I think there should be a goal for women. I want to retire on this amount. Yeah. I would like to have this type of savings or that type of, and typically women just aren't good at that. So sort of a takeaway message of today is maybe people who haven't thought about that before should be thinking, where do I want to be in 20 years' time or 25 years' time? Rather than just working away thinking, I'll ask for one more promotion. And that's as far as our vision goes. Yeah. It should really be a long-term career. Where do I want to be at the end of this all? Satisfied, you know, secure, having paid for the things I need, sort of like a bigger vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's probably that vision that will help us to drive ourselves. So if we start working on our goals and on our ambitions for ourselves later in life, then I think that will then help us to drive ourselves a bit better with the Unapologetically Awesome. So Fiona, I'll come to you on that as well. Anything in particular there you wanted to add?
I agree with Emma. I think you need to know what you want to achieve. And I mean that holistically in a career. Like, first of all, do you want a career? And second of all, do you want to be financially independent? Like, they're pretty basic questions, and you know, some people have opted out of that, and that might be fine. But I think that they are pretty fundamental, like, decisions. And you know, the degree to which, you know, the amounts that go with that are obviously very personal. And I think, you know, honestly, the research will tell you a lot of women, you know, if you look at the key drivers for them in their career, like, money does not come up in the top, where it does come up in the top for men. And the key thing is that should not lead to different outcomes in terms of actual value. And that's up to organisations like my own to ensure that there is fair, you know, there's equity at the point of hire. And the challenge for us is obviously we're inheriting a lot of inequity that, you know, into a company. And then once women are in the company, you know, then we've got very, you know, strong systems to manage pay equity. Our challenges are often at the representation side, that we don't have enough senior women or senior women in highly paid jobs, like technical roles in particular. But I think go back to some of the fundamentals of what's really important for you, and I completely agree. Like, know your value, and if it isn't about being motivated by money, it's being motivated by knowing your value, and I think that in turn will translate into financial wealth, you know, at the level that's right for you, depending on your aspiration.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. And Una, we'll finish with you on that one. Anything that you want to add around women and wealth and goals?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of things. I mean, it's you know, probably a topic close to my heart, given the industry that I'm in as well, because obviously, you know, it's the business that New Ireland is in, and it actually, it's not a shameless plug for New Ireland actually, but it's more, although I've done it now. But since you asked, but no, it's actually more. I do feel very strongly about that financial education for women actually, and about you know, women having the right kind of tools around them. Because I remember early in my career, someone saying, you know, have you started a pension? And I was kind of going, like, clearly not, because that's the most boring thing I could possibly think of to spend money on. So I'm obviously, you know, not going to do that. And then someone pointing out, you know, well, that's actually really important. And kind of like Fiona was saying, like, do you have those goals? Or like Mem was saying, you know, do you know who you want to be? Do you know what lifestyle you want to have when you retire? And you're kind of not surely going to work throughout your career and kind of leave yourself short. And I thought, yeah, that's really important actually. And so that is something kind of worth taking the time to do, because it does come with, you know, you work really hard. And so you want to feel like there is sustainable value in what you've earned during your career. So I think that is important actually, and having that kind of education, which in turn gives you more confidence to do the things like have the negotiation around pay, have the negotiation around, you know, what my career advancement plan is going to look like. I do find that, again, and I see a lot of this in HR, that women are very often kind of saying, well, I don't really want to do that because I'll settle for what I can get, because I don't really want to rock the boat, because I'm a bit apologetic, and, you know, maybe I want to take time off and do other things. And I'm kind of saying, don't, said no man ever. Like, please don't
Yeah.
do that. So ask for what you want, know your worth, back yourself, have the conversation at the appropriate level, and then have that plan and keep your eye on that goal. So I think it's really, really important, and I think financial education is really important.
Absolutely brilliant. And I have a question. We're nearly coming to the end of our questions here, but just around Lean In Ireland, and I'm just going to ask Mema that because I know you're a big Lean In advocate and big Lean In background. So I guess how has it been crucial, and how does it help move the dial?
Well, I think the small groups at work are just so dynamic. I can't describe to you, I mean, there's a couple of people here from our group, and I'm sure they'd agree with me, of how it has transformed some people's sort of thinking about their role, where they want to go. Ideally, how can it change the dial? It can change the dial incredibly if each person here went off to their organisation, or if they were self-employed, if you were in publishing and you got 3 other publishers together to join your group, or I think in Lean In Ireland a lot of you are self-employed. Nuala certainly is, and a couple of self-employed people band together. But if everyone had a circle, the circles then can network with each other. And I really think networking for women is key, because it makes you confident in the business space. You have great conversations with other people around areas that they're in, like pension planning. Not that that's what me and Una talk about, but the structure of Lean In is that you're in a small enough group that it is supposed to link in then with other groups. You could be just once a year saying, let's see who's on the Lean In website. Oh, there's another group. Now, barristers are different because we all know each other. It's a very small enough pool as it is. But you might say, oh, look, there's Arthur Cox's Lean In Circle, which I think they've set up recently. Why don't we meet them for an evening, between 5 and 7 after work one day, and network? So I just think it's so easy. It's free. The website is already set up for you, so you don't have to spend anything to get one going, and it has huge benefits, and you've lost nothing if you do it and you think, didn't enjoy that, I'm getting out of it, although I don't know anyone that's happened to, but it actually doesn't cost much to set one up. So why wouldn't you?
So my favourite hashtag is why not? And on that, I want to ask everyone your favourite inspirational quote. Write all of these down now, girls. Write them down.
Mine isn't as much inspirational as in something I live by. Simplicity is the ultimate in sophistication. I think women need to simplify their lives. All people need to simplify their lives, and things really begin to flourish. It's a bit like taking weeds out of a garden to allow a plant more room to grow. Get rid of some of the tat in your life, particularly negative people. I think they should be the first to go into room 101 and just simplify your life. That would be
brilliant. Okay. Fiona.
I think I've touched on this before, but mine would be, be yourself, everyone else is taken, which is Oscar Wilde. Honestly, I think there's such huge richness in this kind of conversation. I think some of the challenge is, on all of us, is with role models that we have to kind of live up to their standards, what's right for them. And I think it's so important to always come back to what's right for you, simply, because it is your journey. You can't hand the steering wheel off to somebody else or somebody else's standards. And I think if you have a clear view of what that is, you'll be happy, you'll do good work, you'll have the progression that you want, and you make the right decisions. And kind of leave the angst and those with angst somewhere else.
Okay. Deadly, absolutely brilliant. We're going to weed like hell after tonight. We'll be gardening. So Jen, what's your favourite inspiration quote? Or
I don't know if it's a quote. It's probably more maybe a motto of never leave yourself asking what if.
Okay.
What if I did that? And I suppose it ties in with the phrase. It's like, look, life is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. You've got one chance at it. You might as well just believe in yourself and go for it, and you're going to fall down. But yeah, I kind of, those kind of things always speak to me in terms of those sort of mottos.
Yeah, brilliant. And Una?
So consistent with my kind of motto of look up, not down. So Seamus Heaney, when he accepted his Nobel Prize for Literature, said, "Walk on air against your better judgment," which I think is something that we're all guilty of at times, where you kind of go, "Oh well, I know I did that, but it wasn't that great, really." Where you should actually look up and own it and pat yourself on the back and celebrate your success. So again, I think, kind of allowing yourself to have that vision and have those goals and achieve them and then celebrate them is really, really important.
Yeah, brilliant, 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 brilliant. A round of applause, I think, for our panelists. There she is. I'm looking for Priscilla because Priscilla has a roving mic. We're going to do questions and answers. So who has a question to start? Over you go, Priscilla. Watch this, doll speed. Or not. And when you're going to ask your question, stand up and give us your name. We're going to practice this networking stuff and own it.
Unapologetically. Thank you so much for the talk, guys. You were amazing. My name is Sarah Courtney. I'm a maternity coach, self-employed. I work with companies who are supporting their women come back to work after maternity leave. And I'm curious as to your feedback on a lot of the returnship programs that have been publicised recently. I suppose a lot of them have maybe happened or in progress at the moment. Just how are they going? What are we learning? What do we need to be doing better there to support women coming back?
So I might jump in. So I think they're really important. I think one of the things that I learned on my maternity leaves was the importance of having somebody that you could go to while you were on leave to keep in touch. I think keep in touch days are an incredibly important part of maternity leave, actually, and it's something that I'm looking to champion currently in my organisation because it's something that I really benefited from. I think those kind of programs are great. Like, I think that anything that is, again, creating that dialogue and that opportunity to not feel like Fiona was saying, that kind of, do people still like me? Am I any good? Will I know what's going on? Will I feel really out of touch? All of those uncertainties and vulnerabilities are really real and very current. So I think things that we can do to help women to bridge that gap and to not feel like that when they're coming back to work are really important. And I say this kind of frequently at work, but since women are the people who have the babies, then it is very important as a society that we actually work to address those gaps and kind of address those vulnerabilities and do as much as we can collectively to support that. So I think they're incredibly important.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I'd just make a plug for the return year programs for people who've been out of the workplace for many years. And I think we're at a stage now where you have a generation of really, really highly qualified women who may have spent 10, 15, often 20 years out of the workplace and now finding themselves back in full-time employment. Software engineers, lawyers, like really, really, there's a wealth of skill and experience out there. And I think it's, on the one hand, may feel like a challenge that, industry has moved on and the world of work has moved on. And on the other hand, it's moved on for everybody. So nearly the level of change and learning is the same for everybody. And I think maybe the re-entry is as a consequence, a little easier than it might otherwise have been, or certainly might have felt. I happen to know a mother of a friend of my daughter's who was a software engineer, and is back now working with a big multinational and is absolutely thriving. And to see that kind of experience coming back into the workplace and the impact of that on families is just huge. And I think we're going to see a lot more of the economic impact of that in society and in obviously industry in the coming years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Catherine Mulcahy from Microsoft. Thanks for your inspiring stories. I think we're all really motivated today to go away and own it. So I'm here with two unapologetically ambitious interns from Microsoft who, off their own bat, signed up to come today. It feels like I'm in a lean-in circle at the moment, and a lot of the material, it feels really like I wish I'd known a lot of that sooner. Is there any way, you know, and our interns are returning to college soon, like, is there any way we can lean in at that university level, you know, and start inspiring this type of conversation earlier in career?
And funny, it's something, one of the events last year, I was talking to someone who is 21, and she said to me, oh, I'm so young, I'm really not suited for this. And I thought, oh my God, if I had had a lean-in circle when I was 21, oh my God, my life would have been so different. And you really, the accelerated career that you can get when you have a circle of women around you mentoring you and pushing you, absolutely, that's where we need to start. And I guess we're starting, you know, with any woman at this point to try and prove things for everybody. But absolutely, I'd love to see more lean-in circles in the universities and the guys and the girls working together in them, which would be really important.
Can I just say something on that? Sheryl Sandberg has a version of her book called Lean In for Graduates. So if you do know young people, you can give it to them for Christmas. And I don't get any royalties out of this. But I gave it to my daughter, who's 20, and you know, she's doing science in Trinity. She's in a STEM group, you know, science, technology, engineering, and maths. And she said, oh, Mom, it's so boring. At that stage, I think the world is still your oyster. You haven't really come across any unconscious bias yet. You're still getting 2-1s firsts along with the lads. You don't see any difference between you and the guys. The big fall off seems to happen when you get into the workplace. Whatever happens women when they get into the workplace, I mean, I'd love somebody just to get to the bottom of it and find out what it is. But really, I think there's less of a need for it in the college as much as the first job placement. HR should be on them like a rash in the first year to weed out whatever that is that seems to grow, and by the time they're 32 and they've maybe 2 children, they decide to take that step back. So it's in a very short period of time all of that happens. Leave college at 22, thinking the world's your oyster, and by 32 you're wondering, should you take a step back? Is it the right move for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Hi, Dervla O'Brien. Thank you very much, ladies. The collective wisdom of Lean In is fantastic. It's one of the great assets. There's a resource that I came across through Lean In a couple of years ago, which is very important for you two here, but for everybody else in the room, including Simon. And there was a brilliant article in Harvard Business Review called Women Find Your Voice. And it's really good because I've never met somebody who went, sorry, if there was any kind of a job, do you think maybe I could put my CV in? I was just wondering, like. And that goes along with gentle reminder on the subject line, okay? Don't do it, ladies. No more gentle reminders. Deadline, okay? Deadline. But the article is well worth downloading. I think, Bridget, you might remember, was there a Lean In video attached to that? Because I have a feeling I came to the article through
leanin.org website, I'd say.
I think it is, but it's definitely Harvard Business Review, July 2014. I've shared it with hundreds of people at this stage. Okay. It should be required reading for everybody, including the gentlemen. It's brilliant on meetings, language, how you present yourself, how you give your opinion unapologetically, and I just think it'd be a really useful resource, so thanks very much.
Okay. Brilliant, thank you, Dervla. So if we there's a question there, Priscilla, and there's another one here. I think he's staying there.
Thank you very much to everybody in the panel. It was really interesting. I'm in Mema's Lean In group, so I should declare, not at the outset. And she is as bubbly and as confident and as you know, boosting everybody, as you can see today. But I just had a question for the other panelists, just in relation to their roles in HR and recruitment. How fundamental do you think it is in terms of promotional opportunities or job interviews, the composition of the adjudication board in terms of male-female split? I'm just wondering, in our context, there was... county prosecutor jobs came up, 11 of them all in one go, which is very unique, and 9 went to men. And I don't know what the breakdown of women applying. So firstly, I don't know if the 9 out of 11 may be representative of the numbers that applied proportionately. but there was women in terms of the panel, and I don't think there was any sort of policy underlying that they were looking for equal representation. But I'm just wondering, in terms of the criteria or what people look for, does the composition matter, in your opinion?
Oh, it does, absolutely. So for any interview panel, and you know, there's been a lot of research done. If you anonymise a CV and you remove any gender references, you know, who will get the job, and very often women do. And so, again, that unconscious bias comes into it in reviewing just even applications, where people make assumptions about male, female, try and work out dates of birth and all this sort of, you know, monkey business that goes on that we try to knock out. So the composition of interview panel is very important, as is having actually, and again, this is something that I'm a big advocate of, having as comprehensive an assessment as you can as you're looking for candidates to come through. So I think, you know, the kind of traditional come and tell me all about yourself kind of interview isn't as successful. It's not as representative. You know, again, as Mema was saying, you know, you get a guy who will maybe be very confident, and that's just as true for women, but you know, you can find that in certain situations, certain kinds of people do better than others. So if you want to have a balanced approach, then you have to invest more in having a fully rounded selection kind of process, and you have to look at it in other ways. I really like some of the inclusion and diversity work that's happening in other organisations where, you know, sometimes to be more inclusive, actually the first thing that's done is to give the person the job and assess them on the job and see how they do in the job, and then make the decision. I think those kind of programs are really effective, and I'd like to see more of those. So again, I think having, you know, a breadth of approach rather than just the traditional, you fill in an application, you sit in front of a couple of people, if you're articulate and confident and you can position yourself in a particular way, you'll probably get the job. If you're male, female, well, you know, that could be interesting. So certainly having that balance and having that breadth, I think, is incredibly important.
I totally agree with everything you've said. I think it's a bit of a challenge when you're only running an application process, because you're purely opening yourself up to the vagaries of who decides to apply. And whilst it's, you know, we would require diverse slates on all interview processes, so you must have mixed gender on any interview process. And the research will tell you that you need not just one, but you need two of a different gender or ethnicity, whatever the diversity makeup is, in an interview process. Because if you have one, it's good, but it's definitely the only woman in the interview loop. And are we picking the person because it's the woman, or is it, you know? Whereas if you two, the orientation of the assessors will be, let's pick the right person for the job. And so, as a consequence, companies like ourselves, we have to work really hard to make sure that we have a really strong, you know, candidate list, and that sometimes takes a little bit longer. But one of those things would be to include, you know, a diverse set of candidates in that, and we can't just rely on people who apply.
I think, yeah, and I think ideally that would be the case, that you would have a gender balance on the interview panel, but by and large, again, we're saying this, there aren't enough women at senior management levels, so by and large, if you have women going in for middle management roles, they have to be interviewed by somebody more senior than them, so there doesn't always, we don't always have that split. We don't have that availability of, you know, 2 women to 1 man to go in and interview them. So I think because there is a lot of unconscious bias, or in some cases conscious bias, and women and men empathise and are attracted to different qualities in people, I think ideally, yes, we should, but I think we've a good bit of a way to go before practically that can actually be a reality in every organisation.
Thank you.
Simon has a question. Well, sorry, I actually, yeah, this is working. No, just sort of as one of the only men in the room, and as I realised, one of 2 Simons, but
there is another one guy in there.
It's an absolute privilege. And just one thought that struck me is that I would love more men to hear that conversation and to be engaged in that conversation. I was particularly struck by Fiona by mentioning the paternity leave, you know, and how sort of structurally, you know, Facebook have faced that. Are there any other, you know, strategic or, you know, really impactful changes that you've seen your organisations take, or steps that have taken that are sort of changing hearts and minds, particularly of men in those organisations?
Look, I think it's a really interesting point. I think you have mentioned it, and Una has mentioned it, is, you know, really, really deep unconscious bias training. This is not like a couple of hours, do your survey and kind of put yourself in situations. This is actually going on a really personal journey around learning about the history and the makeup of society, and really walking in the shoes of people who have a different experience. And really breaking it apart. I think one of the most impactful conversations I've had was a male leader who had kind of tested one of these programs, and we were then putting a lot of other of our leaders through this. And I would say, to say that his language was like, I'm radicalized, he said, was the experience he'd had. He thought he was a feminist, he thought he was doing all the right things, he supported all of the various diversity initiatives. He said, it's great to do, the Women's Days, it's great to do all the things we support, women, networking for women. He said, but the work needs to happen over here. Like, all of this population of people who are trying to do good things, but who really don't fully understand the issue, because it's, how we're all brought up. It's just these kind of unintentional cues that force us into a way of thinking. And if I was to encourage anybody in any organization, would be go and find some learning. It's not a training that you do. It is generally like a deep personal journey for learning about these kind of deep aspects of society and how we've come to this place. And I'm optimistic. I do think, it'll take some time, but I do think society is changing. I think our own society is changing very quickly. I think, my peers who are mothers of boys are thinking really deeply about how they bring up their boys. And some of that conversation is really, really hard, and not everybody agrees. But I think in the end, we will come to a much better place than we are today. So I do think organizations cause lots of problems, but I also think business is leading here more than most, and we should. But that's where I would go. So.
There's a question down there, Priscilla.
Actually, just to follow up on that point. So I work in a tech company, and they're very forward thinking. They're all about promoting women, and ethnicity, age, those types of things don't normally come into the conversation when you're talking about promotions or your capability of proving yourself in the job. But sometimes where I do see the bias is actually just at lunchtime or after work on a Friday, or when people are kind of loosening up and kind of shedding what they think the corporate culture is and kind of becoming who they are in their personal lives. And that's when they kind of show these biases or have these jokes that are kind of offensive without meaning to be. And I don't know what point I should say, look what you said there, what do you mean by that? Or kind of further emphasize the fact that I'm different to them because I'm a woman, or if I should let it slide. And I find that kind of friction difficult to maneuver sometimes, because it's hard to tell.
It's a really, really important question. And I would be honest and say, people like me in HR departments historically have said, leave that outside. That's an uncomfortable conversation. We're all politically correct in this company. This is what we do. We go to all of these programs and we're all perfect. And we ignore that this is exactly the reality, because it might get us to a really uncomfortable place and potentially a risky place in how people are treated. So I think we have to do a much better job of allowing some of those conversations to unfold. Start with good intention and understanding, like we all do that to some degree. Start with good intention. Find the tools to call it out. Without it being a slight, without it being hugely personalized, but in a way that generates a level of awareness and that helps us all grow and learn from that situation. And I think, it's been said before, Simon mentioned it, to start with the point of view that we all have biases. And I can see yours, but can you see your own? And I think once you kind of fess up to that with that person, you're in it together, and it's not, because at the end of the day, there's a whole intersectionality around, diversity, whether it's, gender or age or ethnicity or sexual orientation. And I think it gets really interesting when you've got a person with a lot of these things going on, right? I mean, that's life. We're all, organizations are bunches of humans, and we do human things, and we mess up. And I think we just need to be more honest about it, quite honestly, and be a little braver around the conversation, and just not shy away from the risk that it feels for someone like you, maybe on a Friday evening when someone says something and, you have that tense reaction. It's very normal, but I think, we could do something with that.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Nikki Dunn. I just want to thank everybody and Breda as well for inviting us. So I suppose I'm kind of picking up a little bit of what the previous question and something that you said earlier. Business, to me, business seems to be leading this movement of empowerment, education and support of women, which is fantastic. But I'm wondering about the panel. I certainly think there's more that I believe the media could do in this. And even the way we celebrate women is completely different. Like if you take, there's two things that struck me over the last couple of years. And there's two national sports teams. One is the Irish national women's football team. And I don't know if people remember the press conference they had to take. They didn't even have their own kit. So that's a big organisation that treated them like that. And they had to go to that extreme to actually get support. And people were so shocked. This is, you know, the 21st century and we're like that. Last year, the women's the Women's Rugby World Cup took place in Ireland. It was the biggest and most successful sporting event in Europe, never mind in the world. And all the media focused on was the bid of the national men's team to host the World Cup, which, to be honest, most people didn't think they'd stood a chance anyway. And it's interesting to see that business is leading this. And I'm just wondering, is there a way that we business can influence, I suppose, the media and push them and challenge them a little bit more, that will actually help us even more?
But I think that comes back a bit to the point that I was saying, where the customer demands it. So if, and I don't follow sports, so I'm not trying to get at it. But if Bank of Ireland, for example, sponsors something, they're in a position to make demands. They're in a position to say, look, the women's team is doing this. We want X, Y, or Z, or we're going to have a photo call, or we're going to do. So I think the business organisations that have been fantastic so far and have been leaders can do a little more, particularly around the media and PR events to do with women. But I'm not really in an organisation, so I suppose it's different for us. But I do think the media report things with women in it differently, but it's up to us to demand more.
I think that's very true. I mean, I think this has been a particular kind of personal, bugbear/soapbox of mine for quite some time, actually. And so any of the people that I share my house with will tell you that if I'm watching any, panel, interview, if I don't think it's gender balanced, I'll be like, well, who's that and who's that interviewer, and noting that. If I think that the questioning is imbalanced in some way, if I notice men interrupting women in a panel, which almost always happens, I'll have something to say about that. And also, I actually have started to participate in events like this much more than I ever did, actually. And I think that that's something that women can do. I think that's incredibly important. On any given day, there are conferences, seminars, events happening all over Dublin, all over Ireland. And lots of women don't give up of their time because they're going, sure, like I wouldn't have much to say now, and maybe I won't do it. But actually, you do. So get involved. If there are industry bodies, industry associations, causes, things that you're passionate about, put your hand up and say, this is me, this is my background, this is what I feel strongly about, and be available to do those. And it does take a little bit of a personal commitment and a bit of investment and a small sacrifice of your own time, but it's very well worth it. And those are things that change that dial, because as you see more representation, then the voice gets louder and that changes the dialogue. And I think that's an incredibly important conversation. I completely agree with the point about the lack of profile. And I suppose, again, as a mother of 3 daughters in particular who all play sport, I really feel passionately that attention, that sort of imbalance needs to change. But I can't change everything, but I can change things that are within my purview. And so getting involved and doing things like this are things that that's the way that I can make a difference. And I would urge everybody in the room to think of doing things like that.
And I think it comes back to influence, because ultimately sponsorship decisions are made at the top. Big organisations sponsor an awful lot of sport. Tends to be, men in those senior positions. And even in business, we have come a long way. We are doing better. But a lot of networking, it goes back to what Memo was saying, happens at sporting events. Like how many women have been offered rugby tickets for the Six Nations that's just gone by. You know, you're probably in there.
You're doing well.
You're doing well, yeah. They're obviously, yeah, they're really. But
I was happy. Like,
yeah, but it
no
doesn't
problem with
happen.
that.
Like a lot of, if you know, I know myself, even with clients or organisations I've been in before, where there's GA, whatever sport it is, it'll be. You'll just be, if it's a golf, we're bringing a client out for golf. Nobody ever asked me, did I actually play golf? It was just assumed that I didn't play golf. My mother was horrified by that. She was thinking, God, in this day and age. But so sport itself tends to be the preserve of men, I think, around sponsorship and getting more of a voice in the media. Again, once we get more women in leadership positions in these organisations that ultimately sponsor them, then that will help to promote them further. But it is a sort of a follow the money thing, I think.
Can I just say one small thing about structural change? That happens a lot in organisations. You know, there's a golf thing going on, but nobody knew about it. Recently, the Bar Council, and we only did it this week, set up a clubs and societies fair, a bit like Freshers' Week. And we had the darts. Like, the bar does an awful lot apart from court work. We had the darts society, we had the golf society, we had the whatever society in the next one, and we put them all out so that people could join, that you weren't hearing on the grapevine, oh, there's a big golf outing and they're all lads at it, because that's how things used to be done. And it's very, very small structural changes create that environment of inclusion.
Yeah, but it still exists in
more traditional.
In very years, so that has come through. So businesses might be doing very well at we need to tick the box. We need to make sure we've the women in the panels, and we're furthering them. But the informal, the social sort of networking, that is incredibly powerful. You can be in the formal, in the suit here, in the premises. The preserve is, and as the lady down the back had said, but that slips then when you get into the social context, then you get to know. And the sport and the tickets, that's where I think you really get to see it. That's where I don't think we have changed an awful lot. I think the next generation coming through I think that will be different, because they're growing up with mothers that work, sisters that are pushing forward. They'll have a different example. It'll not just be the father or brother or whatever. But right now, for me, I've been that person, sitting there going, oh, my clients are being brought out for golf, but it was never mentioned to me, or the lads are, you know what I mean? And it's a very powerful, even though in the office you could say, yeah, they treat you equally, but that's a very powerful exclusion, because then it's like the in-joke, oh, do you remember you mentioned this? And you can build relationships. Business is all about relationships. And where you form relationships is by and large, not in the boardroom. It's in social. Oh, we were down for a couple of pints, we took the clients out, we brought, that's very, very powerful. And to underestimate that, it was only the golf for, we only went for one round, or it was only tickets for the rugby. I think that we're really underestimated, because it's a very, very powerful network, and it's a very strong way that men build business relationships that are really, really strong.
I would just encourage you to call it. I had an experience very recently. My brother's in the tech industry, and he was holding an event, and he was interested, could I send somebody from Facebook to speak at the event, because apparently Facebook's a tech company. But he had this event in the Tesla garage out in Stillorgan. I said, have you any women on the panel? Are there any women going to the event? He said, no CIOs are women. I said, I'll get you a female CIO, because I already have a female CIO in Facebook. And here's another one that I also know, and you know too, and he just had not thought deeply enough. This is the father of 3 girls. And his intentions were good. He had a great event, and getting over himself, apologising and explaining his learning. Yeah. The second thing I would say is media has changed, and this is a little controversial, obviously, given where Facebook is at the moment. But everybody has an account for Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever it is, and that is the new media. And so actually, the opportunity to give voice is so much greater for everybody right now, that I would just encourage everybody to use it. And of course, the traditional media and the newspapers and the television, there are still challenges there, but there's a lot of attention in the social media space, and I think that's an opportunity.
Breda, we have time for 2 more questions. Well, actually, we're way over time, but
we
are going to take 2 more because the 2 ladies are waiting.
Yeah. Well, I'll make this quick. I'm Wendy Hobson. I work in Bank of Ireland, and I'm part of Bank of Ireland's first Lean In Circle, I'm very happy to say. And thank you very much. It was really inspirational hearing all your experiences this evening. I'm also a mother of a 4-year-old son.
So my question is, and I think Fiona touched on it, do you think it's possible to really get equality in the workplace until we get equality at home? And I suppose from where I'm coming from, especially having a son, I just really want to be a positive female role model for him. And I know obviously it's very important to have that for our daughters, but not forgetting the sons, because I suppose we're creating the future too. So I'd just be interested to quickly hear what the panel has to say about that.
I think it's all very interlinked. I remember I was in Singapore and I had the luxury of having a helper live in my house. And a light bulb turned on for me because I, for the first time, realized what it would be like to have a wife.
That would be
Dinner was made, washing was done, children were picked up from the school bus, like everything was taken care of. And this cognitive load was suddenly removed from me. And I thought, wow, that's a different experience, a very different experience. But it also took me letting go, right? And so not vicariously running my children's life through other people, and there's like we had this, it goes both ways. So I think, honestly, to answer your question directly, I don't think fully can happen unless there's social change, and that's on all of us. What we expect of our children, what we expect of our partners, and what we expect of ourselves. Hand on heart, was I comfortable being the main breadwinner? At times I wasn't. I didn't want that burden of responsibility. I wanted shared, or would prefer it, on somebody else's shoulders more so. I think the huge responsibility of parents of boys, and I personally, feel very good to be working because, again, the research will tell you, working mothers of girls are more likely to have girls who have careers, and working mothers of boys are more likely to have partners who are working mothers. And so, that may feel like a lot, but I genuinely feel that there's, a lot of opportunity there, and that is going to take some time.
Good. And we have one more.
Hi, I'll be super brief then, not apologising, but super brief. My name is Susanna, I work in Bank of Ireland. Thank you very much. We've spoken about wealth, which I think is an incredibly interesting angle, and we spoke about the media, and we speak about ourselves as colleagues and employees, but we're also consumers. So for instance, you work in New Ireland, there is an asset wealth management company set up in the UK, very much with an IND, started as an LGBT plus company, and it is part of their business proposition, of their unique selling point, and it's a massively wealthy cohort of consumers. So we're all also consumers. So if we challenge our companies to set targets, to be very brave and bold, but also do it ourselves, what do we want to see with the companies that we spend our money with? And I don't know if I leave it at that, or do we have time for comment, for response?
Agree.
I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So if you want to look at Emerald Life just as an interesting kind of a company bio, it's just kind of interesting, quite novel.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. And that rounds it up, because I know I've kept you now from all the wine that Arthur Cox have very kindly provided for us. I think we want to do a massive round of applause for these four women. And I can't wait to see all the social media posts tonight when I'm going to sleep, to see what takeaways you took from these amazing women. I want to. We get it. Lorna might have the Wi-Fi password. We'll sort that out for you. But I want to say a thank you to Arthur Cox again, because they have been so good to us tonight. You've seen Simon run around here taking photographs for us. You've seen Simon here speaking. You've Lauren at the back there looking after us, and Grania, who's been fab to us as well. So a round of applause for Arthur Cox. Quickly, I want to say a big thank you to my Lean In Ireland comrades. Some of them's here. The girls have been helping me with bits all for the last couple of weeks to gather this up, and everybody's done their bits. So a round of applause for my Lean In sisters. Lastly, I want you to give me some feedback on the Lean In Ireland Facebook page as to what other events you want to see us doing, what you thought of this one, what you could do differently. So let us know what other things we could do together as a group, and try and get yourselves into Lean In circles and actually do some of this for yourself. So take action after this. And now I'll let you out to networking. Try and meet each other and see if you find yourself a Lean In circle. Thank you.
I think we need to take these off.